I knew with 100% confidence that I was going to do it. And I knew that if I pulled on earlier, I would not have felt that confident, which is why I had to pace myself. And you're right, the attempt before was definitely rushed. And I was feeling the time pressure. I knew the clock was ticking. 4 minutes is not a long time. It doesn't give you that many attempts realistically. So I knew the clock was ticking. I knew I had to do it. And yeah, I have been in that position before. That same nationals I was talking about before, I went out to my fourth boulder knowing someone else had done it, and I completely caved. I didn't even like my first attempt was absolutely terrible, not even close to zone. And then I never figured out the top. And it wasn't necessarily the hardest climb. I just was not able to kind of reel it in mentally. That was a key takeaway, that I need to be so locked in those final moments, and I can't let myself spiral. I can't let myself feel like I have to do something to win, which is like, again, you know that you have to do it to win, but how do you prioritize something else above that? And for me, having visualized myself grab that finished hold over and over and over again, I didn't care where I stood on the podium. What I cared about more than anything was just grabbing that hold, because I knew how it felt. I knew what it felt like. I knew how it felt to stick it, but I hadn't done it yet.
Melina Costanza, welcome back to the Testpiece podcast.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it's only been a month since we did our last episode. And by the way, people love that episode. I love that episode. I even know a bunch of pros who messaged me and said that they love that episode. So if you are listening to this now and you haven't heard Melina's first episode, that was number 119. You should go back and listen to that, because this is a follow-up. Melina, my first follow-up. So you're the first follow-up on the Testpiece podcast.
Wow.
You just had the most incredible month. And in our last podcast, there was a lot of focus on the mental training and prep you were doing for nationals. And I don't think I quite realized at the time that nationals was just about to come up. And then spoiler, you competed in nationals, you won, not just one discipline, but lead and bouldering. And that wasn't your first time winning. You won last year in both lead and bouldering. And it was a pretty epic competition. So I thought it'd be really cool to bring you back on, hear about how all that training that you had been doing in your mental prep came out in nationals. And just, I want to hear it from your point of view, because that was quite a month you had, Melina. Congrats.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was certainly a busy month, a little bit hectic, but in the best way. And got kicked off with nationals, which was 6 rounds over 4 days, which is like a lot of climbing and a lot of focus, a lot of mental preparation went into being able to, first of all, have the mental stamina and the physical stamina to do as much as I did in those 4 days. But then in the month since, I've been doing a lot, getting outdoors, and I've competed every single week for the past 4 weeks. So it's been a lot. It's been busy.
How much time do you take off after nationals? I assume that, those 4 days of climbing are more draining than an average 4 days. How big a break afterwards do you take?
It depends. It depends a lot. Last year after nationals, that was one of the more brutal competitions I've ever done. I just felt so completely drained that I went straight to Hawaii. I flew from Boise to Hawaii, and I spent an entire week sleeping 10 hours a night by the pool, sipping cocktails. It was like absolutely very much needed rest and recovery to even like mentally reset before I started training for the upcoming competitions. After this comp, I felt really ready to go. I'd been putting in work. I felt fit and I felt mentally sharp. And I also just had a lot of fun competing, whereas last year I didn't really have any fun at all. And I enjoyed myself so thoroughly that I just wanted to keep doing it. I felt voracious. I signed up for comp after comp after comp. And even having competed last weekend, I feel like I'm still itching for more.
I gotta ask, how'd you do in all those comps that were right after nationals, and how did they compare? Like, what level of competition was it compared to nationals?
Yeah, I will say that I was registered for a competition 2 days after nationals, and I started warming up for it. Felt like there was absolutely no chance that I would be able to do it, and did not compete in that one. But the that following weekend, I competed in Dead Point, which had Quinn Mason, Kyra Condi, Allison Vest. There were four of us were all in nationals semifinals the weekend or a week and a half before. So the level of competition was relatively high at that one as well. It was a Halloween competition, so it was just fun. We were all dressing up in costumes. But there was that one, and then two of the Boulder Fest series competitions, which are the Bouldering Project run competition series. So I did win all of them, but I mean, it depends on the competition. I think the level varied from competition to competition, but definitely some had pretty stacked fields. I don't know. I think a lot of people enjoy, if you're peaking at nationals, you kind of want to enjoy the peak. You kind of want to sign up for a few more things after and let that ball keep rolling. Plus, it's just a great experience getting in the mindset over and over and over again, I think.
That's a lot of winning. Congrats. I'm curious what the type of setting was like at those comps versus nationals, because I mean, it's interesting to hear you winning at all these different kinds of comps, because my hunch is that they all have a different flavor of setting and emphasize different things.
They really do. And I think that is one of the beauties of comp climbing, especially bouldering, is that you can get such a wide variety. I mean, any of the Boulder Project competitions, I feel like, I mean, yeah, it varies setter to setter, but typically they're really big on using volumes. They're really big on pushing you into corners, having you physically and metaphorically, I guess, but having you kind of have to press your body up into corner positions, utilizing your shoulders, your triceps, a lot of awkward positions, and it is more physical in some ways, but definitely a lot less pure power, pure pulling. It's very technical. And then the one I did at the front, the Dead Point Halloween competition, was one of the setters was also a national setter. So it's cool that you get some overlap there. A lot more powerful, dynamic. It really just varies from place to place. But I think, I mean, one of my philosophies as a competitor is that you're only as good as your weakest, I mean, I guess your weakest style, your weakest hold type, your weakest, I mean, mental state. And by that logic, any single competition that you go to, no matter what style it is, it's an opportunity to identify those weakest points so you can start to elevate them.
So nationals seems like a big deal. I mean, it's called nationals because it's, the competition for the nation. And then you went into these local comps, but they have a stacked field because every climber in Salt Lake City seems to be basically a professional. And I'm wondering how you prepared mentally for these, quote unquote, not as important comps. Like, just how did they make you feel? Like, what did they bring out of you compared to nationals?
I think what I've historically thought prior to this year is that winning nationals puts more pressure on me to win other competitions, and that if I'm not able to win those, somehow it undermines my performance or invalidates my success in other events and other avenues. But what I've learned this year, and I think one of the ways that my whole mindset and perspective around climbing competition has changed, is that each event is unique. Winning one event does not make you the best, it just makes you the winner of that event. You have to keep proving yourself over and over and over again. There's no end to that. You aren't owed anything. You have to go out and earn it every time. And every time you do earn it, every opportunity you have to earn it is a privilege. So that's kind of how I approached all of these competitions. And yeah, some of them, it depending on the field, the climbs can be set harder, set easier, and you have to be able to, in a flash round, go out and flash everything. That is just as valuable of a skill as going out into a one top round and having doing the hardest send of your comp career. It's like you have to be able to operate on all ends of the spectrum to be a well-rounded competitor, and different types of competitions just challenge me in different ways.
Okay, I couldn't help but asking about all these latest comps, but what I really wanted to do was take us back to the last podcast and bridge it to where you've been today and really do it through this lens of nationals, not because it's just the most important comp, because clearly they all have value. And when you mentioned that, you said something like, my theory of being a climber is you're only as good as your weakest style. I actually thought you were going to say you're only as good as your last competition. You know, this idea that like you have to keep on winning. So anyways, I want to backtrack just a little bit. And we were talking about your prep for nationals in our last podcast. And something that you mentioned is that even though you had won the 2023 nationals in both bouldering and lead, it wasn't a great comp for you internally. And you said that the way you recovered from it was in Hawaii, poolside with cocktails, which actually sounds like something that's a pretty baller move. That sounds like something you would do to celebrate. But maybe we can start with why that comp wasn't so good internally, and then the prep you were doing right before the most recent nationals, the 2024 nationals, and just kind of take us through that little transition period.
Yeah. Last nationals was really tumultuous throughout the entire event, lead and bouldering, lead especially. It was my first big competition back after taking some time away for mental health purposes, and I really felt like I had something to prove, which for me at the time was very dependent upon the results that I was able to produce. And I think that any competition I go into where my focus is on results, it really does not set the stage for me to perform my best because I'm thinking about something that's entirely out of my control. And throughout that event, I was really critical of my performance every single round. I was using it as an opportunity to kind of tear myself down as opposed to learning what I need to know and then letting it go, which I think is an approach that is a lot more helpful for me. And I did a lot of that this year at the competition, where you learn from the round, but you don't carry the emotional weight with you. You only carry the lesson. But yeah, I was spending a lot of time really beating myself up for every single mistake. And I just never felt like I was good enough or that I'd ever be good enough. And I was taking results, and kind of my self worth was entirely contingent upon my performance. Whereas for this competition, I spent a lot of time leading into the competition trying to identify a bigger purpose for why I do it. I was trying to kind of get to the heart of why do I compete if I perform poorly based or compared to my own personal standards. What does that mean? Is that a placement or is that just purely performance? And what about climbing, what about competition climbing specifically inspires me? Why am I even signing up for this competition? Will I be satisfied with X result, Y result, and Z result? And at the heart of it, what I think was the most pivotal change for me was identifying that I did not actually care about winning this competition at all. And I know that sounds like, from the other side, it's really easy to say that in retrospect, but I actually feel like every competition I've signed up for recently, I have been able to completely abandon the results and focus specifically and only on the moment, every single individual moment, and appreciate the moments that lead into the rounds and lead every single moment throughout the day, every moment that I spent with my family during the competition, every moment where I stood facing the crowd before I turned around to climb. Every moment I feel like I really cherished and I really appreciated. And that was the biggest difference, was learning and teaching myself how to do that.
I really remembered that part we talked about last time and took it to heart, this idea of why why am I even competing? Like, isn't this supposed to be fun? Like, just this idea that the whole point is that you have a challenge and that you're presented with a bunch of new climbs and it's an opportunity. And I thought about that for both myself and for my kids and having them compete. and just that reframing of this is like an exciting moment. I feel blessed to get to have new boulders to try my best on. So I I hear that, and I'm really happy that you got to go into this nationals, and it sounds like it was actually enjoyable. And I just want to pick a little bit more at that that shift. Like I hear what you're saying, where before you were super critical of yourself, you just were really results oriented, and so rather than learning lessons, you were just tearing yourself down when things went wrong. And now I hear about this happy other side. But was there like some kind of pivotal moment where you were able to make this almost 180? Was it some kind of, did you lock yourself in a dark room and meditate for 2 days? Like, just how did you make that shift?
3 days, actually. No, I'm kidding. I the thing about it is I don't think it was one moment. I think, like learning anything, it takes time and it takes practice, and progress isn't linear. And I think it's really hard for people to conceptualize how mental practice could be anything but kind of an on or off switch, but it isn't binary. For me, it was I would write in my journal. I would feel like I would come to these epiphanies about why I do it. And then I'd go to the gym and I'd feel amazing and I'd be, I don't know, really true to my goals and my values. And then the next day I would go to the gym and have a bad session. And then I would kind of be confused about why that is. And it's because you don't just, mindset training isn't checking a box, it's constant, deliberate practice, it's incremental progress. And so much of it was spending the time doing the practice, taking what I learned from books, from podcasts into the gym, implementing them in mock rounds or in drills, trying to see how they applied and how they fit in with the structure of my workouts and of my competition practice. So the main thing for me, I think, was learning to, I guess, reframing my nerves and reframing the energy and the feeling that you get when you're about to compete. And that came from, I think the book is called The Confident Mind, that I was listening to in the weeks leading up to the competition. But a lot of it is when you feel the butterflies in your stomach, when your hands kind of get sweaty and you feel your pulse rise. A lot of people take that as a negative. And I think reframing that, and every single time I felt that leading up in every single mock competition that I did, every single time I put myself into high stress or high pressure environments to kind of simulate that nationals feeling, I learned to embrace it. I thought, this is a great thing. My adrenaline is high. That's like a superpower. Every single time I felt that, it was like constantly practicing reframing, reframing, reframing. And that doesn't happen immediately. That's one of those things where you can't just expect your mindset will flip the second you want it to. For me, it was in practice, saying it over and over, reiterating it until I actually started to believe it. And I think that's one of the reasons also why I wanted to compete so much since nationals, is because I kind of crave that feeling. I love the pressure and I love the butterflies and I love the feeling you get when you're standing about to compete as much almost as I like the competition itself.
Do you still have moments where those nerves feel negative and you have to give yourself positive self-talk? Like, is it still something you work on to this day? Or yeah, just that.
Yeah. I mean, at risk of getting ahead of ourselves, at nationals, there were moments, especially before finals in each discipline, where I was feeling kind of low energy and low interest and low motivation, even in ISO. And I've come to expect that I'm not always going to be on. I can't be at high alert, high intensity, high energy throughout the entire competition, because that just isn't sustainable. And especially when it's so many rounds over such a short amount of time, you have to be conservative with your energy, I think. And so I've learned that when I feel that way, I need to trust that when the time comes, I'm going to turn it on, because you can't control the way you feel constantly. Otherwise, it just is too draining. You just have to trust that the time and energy that you put into preparation, you have to, why prep that way if you're not going to trust yourself to turn it on when it matters?
I love that idea of prepping and then having faith in that prep that you go through, because It's that saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. I think it's something like that. And so that's just
Yeah.
another plus one for putting in the effort while training. And then when it's that go time, it's like, well, I'm used to this. This
Yeah.
is how it happens for me. Did you listen to your favorite psych up song? I think it was Creed. I'm blanking on what it was
Yeah.
from Rocky, or yeah, or no, it's from the movie Creed. I can't remember what it was called. Did you
Yeah,
utilize that?
Run in
Run it,
from
yeah.
Creed. I did. The interesting thing is in lead finals isolation, I told you I wasn't feeling that into it. And I went out and I read the climb and I wasn't feeling into it at all. I looked at it. This is no shade to the root setters. It was an awesome climb. I looked at it and I was like, I do not want to do this at all. And then I got back into ISO and I was like, shoot, I mean, I got to get myself excited. But it was one of those things I kind of just I knew I would rise to the level. And Alex was in there because Ava, who was another finalist, is one of Alex's kids. So, I mean, young adults. She's 19. But we were in ISO, and Alex was like, hey, are you going to decide to do this right now? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to decide. It's going to happen. I'm going to choose to do it because I know myself and I know I'm going to do it. And then I didn't listen to any music for the entire time I was in ISO, and that's the first time I've chosen not to do that in a really long time. But I wanted to be as in tune as I possibly could with everything I was feeling. I didn't want to muffle it or mute it by having any more sensory input, which maybe sounds weird to say, but I really felt like I needed to be in tune with my body and in tune with the crowd and in tune with everything that I was feeling at that moment. And I felt physically and focus wise a way that I've never felt before in a competition. And I wonder now if that was partially because I wasn't listening to music. But it wasn't really a deliberate choice. It just felt right and I just went with it. And I think that's also part of trusting your instincts and being adaptable in the moment.
Yeah, Malia, that's really heavy, actually. I think there's something really deep there. We often use caffeine, sugar, music, all these things to uh, alter our state. I mean, really, like alter our state. And sometimes that's a tool that can be used, but there's something really interesting about recognizing that if you really want to be here and be present and tapping into that and really listening to yourself, that maybe silence is the way to do it. That's interesting. Good job.
Yeah, and I feel like silence is something that I've been practicing a lot. Just being able to sit in silence and clear my head and take moments to reset. And I feel like putting myself in that space before I even got on the wall was almost like a primer for that. And when I basically how it was set up is that you had a first isolation chair inside of the building, the training center, and then they set up a second chair in a tent right beside the lead wall, kind of like a World Cup. And you can hear the crowd. You're basically watching the crowd from the tent. You can hear everyone cheering for the person that is climbing. You can basically see the belayer. You can't see the climber, but of the person who is climbing. So you're so close to all of the action and you're standing there tied in, looking at the crowd, just waiting to go. And I feel like, man, this sounds so weird, but I felt like I was vibrating. Like the energy in my body was like tickling my skin. And I knew in that moment that I was gonna have like the climb. I was gonna do the thing. I just felt it. It just felt physically and mentally like I knew what was gonna happen and that it was all being manifested.
Awesome. Uh, this is
Yeah, it
this
was
is
cool.
this is this thing that I always wonder about, where confidence is important to perform your best, but confidence is earned. But then you have these moments where you just know that you're going to send, know that you're going to do well. And like it's like you can't fake confidence, but you kind of do need to have it to enter into that state. But then sometimes you just tap into something that's just special and beautiful. And there's no question there. Just I guess it's like, how do you, yeah, how did you get into that state? Please tell me. I'd like to experience that all the time.
Yeah, it's really special and it's something that can't really be forced. And I feel like it was kind of the culmination of so much physical training and so much mental training, and then, like I was saying, just trust. I think that was the single biggest thing. It is confidence, and I do think that confidence is an interesting thing because yeah, you need to have it. You need to have the skills to back it up, but you also can't be arrogant. And I think the main difference is, like I was saying before, thinking that you're owed anything. It wasn't so much that I felt like I deserved to win or that I deserved to be in the top. It's just that I knew that everything was aligning and that I had done the work in every single way that I could, and that there was no such thing as failure at that point, because no matter what I went out and did, that would be the pinnacle of what I was able to do. And even if that was falling 3 clips up, that would have been the what my performance was capable of at that moment where everything aligned.
Okay, so you said trust. And I just want to tease this out here with what you just said, because there's what it sounded like is what you mean by trust is that trust that you were prepared to give it your all, not necessarily trust that what you had to give would win you the competition. Am I right in that little differentiation there?
Yeah, I do think that's an important distinction because, I mean, again, anytime that you think about the results, I feel like it no longer is trust in yourself, it's trust in other people's shortcomings. And I think I trusted that I was going to do the route and I didn't care if anyone else did it, because to me, doing the absolute best that I could have done in that moment would have been 100% sufficient. I would have been satisfied with that, no matter what that looked like, no matter how that placed.
I do have some memories in my past where I literally gave my all to a specific boulder problem I can think of, and I came up short, and it was on a trip, and I did not do it. And it's one that I have no regrets on because I actually really feel like I left it all out there. Like there was just I had
Yeah.
nothing left. And it's an interesting feeling of satisfaction without results, which is
And I
strange.
think that's also why what we train for is that feeling. The feeling of liberating yourself mentally to leave it all out there physically. And there's nothing that feels better than like the absolute limit of what you're capable of. And I think sometimes that's why I mean, shoot, I love topping things. I love grabbing the finish holes. I love clipping the chains. But sometimes you feel like maybe you could have done more, you know? Sometimes you feel like maybe you couldn't show everything you had in the moment. And that is, I don't know. Sometimes I prefer the feeling of going to my absolute physical limit and falling, even if it's falling short of the top, because I know that there was nothing left in the tank. There was nothing left to give. I don't know. I don't know. I like topping things. I'm not saying that I don't.
What's funny though is what we're talking about right now was your performance on lead, and you're smiling. The memory is great. You were vibrating. You said you performed exactly how you wanted to, and you actually didn't top. I mean, you got really close, but you actually
No,
didn't
I
clip
did
the.
top.
Did you top on that?
In
Oh,
finals, yeah.
I thought you fell on the last move. Okay.
Nah, I
Uh,
topped.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I misremembered, which is even better that you did top. Uh,
Yeah, it was sick.
okay, even though we're already there at the lead finals, can you just take us to that day when you first started maybe quality? So lead final, or sorry, the lead discipline is the first one to be contested at nationals, and just what were you telling yourself on day one? Like, what was when you woke up and qualies were that day? Like, what was your prep like for that day?
Yeah, I this comp I was just really excited to climb. I feel like I didn't put too much emphasis on mental prep or anything. Day one was just about going there, having fun, doing what I do. And okay, so first of all, what I did for the whole comp, I turned Instagram, I delete it from my phone. Which is funny because this is when our episode was coming out, so I'd have Alex told me every single time something would come out and I would re-download Instagram and then share it and then delete Instagram again because I don't know, it just is a distraction. I didn't look at results a single time for lead throughout the entire competition. I didn't even look to see how people did in qualifiers after lead was over because I just didn't want to know at all because I just didn't think it was relevant to me. So for all I knew what place I ended up in because I knew the running order, which is reverse qualification order. So I knew I'd be coming out last, but I did not know that I had gotten first on both routes. And based on how I felt, I assumed I hadn't because I didn't feel that awesome, honestly. I just felt a little bit tired, but I think what's different about this comp from previous comps is that I didn't read into it at all. I know sometimes that not every route or every climb or every round or even every day is going to be my best during a competition. And it doesn't benefit me to overanalyze it because it's not like I can prepare more physically at that point. So, yeah, the first day was a little low energy. I didn't feel my best, and I didn't know how I did at all. But I kind of like it that way. I appreciate the mystery of it all because when you have I mean, not no way of knowing, I could have looked, but when you decide not to know, there's no reason to even think about anyone else because it doesn't matter.
Uh, okay, that's really interesting that you just completely deleted Instagram, and I feel really bad for dropping your episode.
No, 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 it was fine.
You're such a pro that you still went on and shared that stuff. Thank you, and I'm sure all your fans appreciate it too. But uh, it's interesting to just totally get rid of distractions, not just distractions from the outside world, but even not paying attention to the other athletes. God, like I don't know, Malia, that's like a really there's something both really interesting about just that practice of trying to just focus on yourself, but also to me just reeks of confidence where you're like, I don't even care what other people did. I mean, like it's funny. It's like this dual sided thing where it's almost just a really personal focus, but that also just shows your confidence in yourself too, which is kind of a funny, uh, different side of the coin there.
Yeah, there's that, and there's also like an element of like put your money where your mouth is. Like I'm saying, I don't care about the results. Prove it. You know, if I really don't care about the results, then I'm not going to look at them. But if I do a little bit, then I'm going to look at them. You know, like if I really don't care about results, I am deleting Instagram from my phone. I'm telling everyone who knows me not to tell me what the results are. I'm not going to look. And yeah, I'll know what number I go out the next day, but I don't want any information. I don't want any external noise.
Something that I always bounce around in or bounce back and forth is when I want to perform my best, sometimes I want people maybe to cheer me on, or there's all these different variables that could enter the equation. But in some ways, all that stuff, if you strip it away and it's just you and the climb, it may be more simpler because sometimes you can use the energy of the crowd to your advantage. Sometimes you can use maybe being an underdog or being the top dog as an advantage, but in some ways it might just overcomplicate things. And it's something I always uh, can't decide what to do. Like, do I try to use the variables around me to try to bump me up, or should I just try to cut out the amount of variables and just focus on, well, the climbing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the person. I think it depends on what motivates you. Because for some people, it is either chasing someone else's results, or being chased by someone else. But for me, that just has never worked. For me, it's always play to win. But sometimes when you feel like you're being chased by other people, it's really hard to focus on playing to win if you feel like there's anything to lose. Because in that situation, theoretically, there's everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you feel like you're the top contender and you are being chased by other people, in theory, that means that you can only fall from that position. And for me, my intrinsic motivation to get to the top is far stronger than my motivation to beat any individual person. And for me, it is simpler just to strip everything else away. If you've seen the Breakpoint documentary on Netflix, which is about tennis players, there is one of the athletes was saying that, I mean, there's so much going on, especially when you're playing for millions of dollars. It can be really, really hard, and you're playing directly against one other person. There are a lot of factors, and you can't ignore the competition because you have to study the competition. And so much of that person's mental routine was stripping it away and just playing tennis. It's just tennis. It's just back and forth over and over. It's just rhythm, you know? And I think the more for me that I can strip away, the more I can expose. It's just climbing. It's just grabbing one hold after another. And it's just how many holds do you want to grab? Am I choosing to grab the next hold or am I choosing to fall, you know? And for me, yeah.
I just love that you brought tennis back into it. Of course, we gotta get those tennis references.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a tangent, but it's an analogy that I always thought about in life, where the people that we're really impressed by often completely disregard or throw away the kind of normal path that we're all on, where it's like, hey, take this test. Actually, let me say a different way. Okay, we all go to school, and to get an A, you're given a test. And you're like, okay, like, here's the test. This is your challenge. This is how you do well. You get 100%. This is what the best score is. And we kind of go through that in life. It's like, okay, then you go to college, then you get a job and you get performance reviews. But I always think that the people we're most impressed by step off that path. I call it the golden brick road, or the yellow brick road from Wizard of Oz. And they go and they make their own challenges. So instead of someone saying, Malia, to get number one, you have to beat this person. That's what it is. It's like, okay, that may set your sights this high, but if you decide your challenge is, my challenge is to be the best I can be right in this moment, then who knows what you're capable of, because you're not artificially putting some kind of challenge ceiling like only this high. And so just I'm always impressed by that. And it's not easy it's not easy to do. Like, I hear what you're saying. And I'm just trying to figure out how I can better live up to everything I can be, rather than just whatever challenge is in front of me.
It is really hard. I agree with that. And it took a long time. And it's one of those things where I don't anticipate that now that I feel it right now, now that I'm in that mental state right now, that it'll just inherently be sustainable forever. It's one of those things that is hard. If it were easy, everyone would do it. And it takes a lot of, like you said, confidence, but also a lot of self awareness and a lot of understanding of your own intrinsic motivations. And so much of that is just knowing yourself and giving yourself the space to really know yourself. And I feel like in the world we live in, there just so much of the self. I feel like you just distribute it over so many different distractions and so many different platforms and online and hobbies and whatnot. There just are so many ways that you can. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse that there's so much going on all the time in our worlds. And it can be a source of information, a source of enlightenment, or it can be a distraction. And you just have to be so on it and you have to be so true to what you want sometimes to ignore all the noise and to seek out the information that is important to you. That, I don't know, it is hard. And I don't think that I don't want to like make it sound like, oh yeah, anyone can just do it. All you have to do is XYZ. And it's like, it's not that easy. It's hard. And it was really hard for me and time consuming. But yeah, I think that's also why I'm like really proud of myself for this competition because I did feel like I was able to apply a lot of what I learned every single day.
Okay, I know you said that you can't just say do XYZ, but how did you hear the quiet internal self voice and not get shouted at by the crowd of this like distributed self? You know, you deleted Instagram. Just what are the tricks to tap into yourself and not get stuck, with a dispersed ego all across the crowd?
For me, a lot of it is making time and space for introspection every single day. And that I talked about journaling a lot in the last podcast, but every single day leading up to nationals for months, I journaled. And some days it was, I went to the gym, I felt good, I did this, whatever, I don't know, very surface level. And some days it would be, I feel weird about the way that I responded to this one question from this one person. Why do I feel this way? Why did I say what I said? Let's expose a deeper sentiment that maybe I have about this whole situation. The example being that I felt not that good about, I was talking to my brother about something, and I ended up saying my response to one of his questions had a lot to do about like wanting to really be like another person, like really wanting to like feel like my performance was dominant over theirs. And then I thought about it and I didn't like it, but I couldn't identify what about it I didn't like, because I'm a huge fan of like Michael Jordan and his whole, I mean, philosophy, it seems like, is crushing opponents and being absolutely dominant and shit talking. And there's so many things about him that I find wildly interesting, but it does not align with my own personal competition style at all. And I had to kind of go deep. I wrote pages and pages about why do I feel this way? What would dominating this person, would it make them less than and me more than? Or is it just scores on paper, for one? And why do I care? What does it say about me? And I just ask myself a bunch of questions that make me really uncomfortable. And it's exhausting, but I spend like an hour sometimes just getting deep into my own personal thoughts and biases and preconceptions. And yeah, it can be exhausting, but I feel like that is one of the ways that you get to know yourself the best, is by asking yourself the hard questions.
Isn't it weird how you can ask yourself questions? Like that almost sounds
Yeah,
hypocritical.
it is. There just are layers to consciousness, I think, that sometimes you just have to peel them back one by one.
Yeah, I've heard it said that people write to think, and I think there's something powerful there. It's rather than thinking about writing is the way to give an idea to someone or to the world, but it's actually a way for you to see what you think on paper and to work it through, because boy, you think you know something and you write it down, you realize that there's no logic there, and it takes a couple of, well, it takes maybe an hour to ask those questions and then write out in a way that when you see it materialized, you realize that oof, you didn't have it quite right in your head. It was all mixed up, and I think that's really cool that you do that.
Yeah, thank you. I find it really helpful, and that is probably the number one thing that I do mental wise, especially like outside of the gym, that I think has helped me the most.
Okay, qualies went well, even though you didn't know they went well. And then it's the next day, there's semis in the morning and finals at night. Is that correct? So you're still doing lead climbing. You show up in the morning, it's semis. How did that go for you?
Fortunately for this event, we had qualies and then a rest day, and then semis and finals the following day, which was, I've never had that schedule before. It was kind of weird because you have so much buildup and anticipation, and then just a day of doing nothing. I mean, it was great. I went and I watched my brother compete and had some family time, but it was kind of, yeah, all that whole day felt like a little bit in limbo. And then showing up to semifinals the following day, I, yeah, I didn't know how I had done, but I, that whole round was kind of a blur to me. I don't really know why that is, but I feel like I was excited, but I wasn't quite in the right headspace yet. And I feel like when we are talking about that sliding scale, I guess from like confidence to arrogance, I was like maybe more on the arrogant end that round, which I don't know. I mean, I've tried to analyze it, and sometimes there are things you just need to let go of. And this one, I don't really know what it was, but when I read the route, I was really excited to try it. There was one move where I got into my head that I could skip 3 holds and just go all the way 4 holds past, and I just could not shake the idea that I wanted to do that. Maybe it wasn't arrogance, maybe it was just stupidity. But in ISO, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And then I got out there and I tried to do it, and shockingly enough, the setters are really good at what they do. And it did not go well at all. I like spanned the whole distance, and then my other hand popped off the wall, and I didn't even get movement to the next hold because I wasn't going toward the next hold. I was going to the hold 4 holds later. So it ended up, I wasn't even in a podium position coming out of semifinals, which, I mean, Alex told me it was arrogant, which I don't, yeah, I agree with her about that one. But at the end of the day, I think that what was really cool about that whole round is that had that happened in another comp in a different headspace, I would have been really upset about the placement and beating myself up about making a dumb decision. But in this round, I was like, yeah, I mean, I tried something stupid. It didn't go well. I've learned a lesson from that. I didn't place my what I wanted to, but it also isn't A, it's not the finals, and B, I tried really hard up there. Like I went up there and I tried really hard and I tried to do the move really hard and I didn't do it. And so I felt trying hard. And you know what I love doing is like trying really hard no matter what the circumstances are. So I feel like after that round, even though there were a lot of things that were not my best showing about it, mostly just like decision making wise, I came away from it being like, yeah, that was a great round. That was great. I had fun. I'm excited for what's next. And that is like the single biggest change I feel like from previous competitions to this comp. Being like, yeah, that was, I mean, not my best, but I'm just psyched that I got to try hard and then I get to keep going. And letting it go, learning and letting go. That's what I was saying before. Learn it, let it go.
It's funny how you would beat yourself up about not being in podium position leaving semifinals because there is no award for being in podium position when you leave semis, and it shows you how critical you may have been on yourself in the past because like who cares?
Yeah, I just always cared about I wanted to win every single round and if I didn't it was just never good enough. And I wanted to top every climb and if I didn't it was never good enough. And I mean, I still want to top every climb. I still want to win, of course. I mean, I don't actually usually even know if I win or not at this point. But I want to top everything and when I don't top everything, I feel really motivated to identify why I didn't top it and then just hammer on that and figure out what can I take away from that climb? Why didn't I top it? Was my fitness not high enough? Was my mindset not right? Did I make a bad decision? How can I eliminate this from happening again? And now it's like, not, I suck, I'm not good enough. It's like, next competition, I will not be thrown by this. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it.
Okay, so you complete semis in the morning. You said you were perhaps a bit on the you weren't in the perfect confident headspace. You were a bit maybe more in the arrogant headspace, and you made a read mistake that then turned into a earlier fall than you wanted it to. But then you also said earlier that you showed up to finals and sat in that chair before you went out, and you were in some maybe one of the best mental states that you'd ever been in. And so I know you said that you learned and let it go, but what did that process like? Take me a little more into the details on that gap between semis and finals and how you made that switch into that wonderful headspace.
I think a lot of it was not trying to get into a different headspace. I have spent so many competitions forcing it where it doesn't really feel authentic. And also, I can get a little bit superstitious almost, where I'm like, I find something that works a little bit one time and then I have to do it every single time. And if I don't do it, then it's like not a good thing. And then if it doesn't work, then I can never do it again. And it's like, what I did this time is kind of just abandon all that and trust myself. And I think it's harder to trust yourself when you have a round that doesn't go your way, but it shouldn't be. You know, at that point, there is nothing else you can do. All you have is the training that you've done. You are as good as your training. And the last thing that you should do is kind of compromise that by getting in your own way. I feel like there's so much self sabotage that many of the best athletes do that inhibits them from ever really achieving their full potential because they don't believe it. And if you don't believe that you can do something, there's no chance in hell that you're doing it, even if you're physically capable of it. So for me, it was just, I trust myself to do this. Either it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, but I can't force it. I can't force myself into a mindset that's going to make it happen. So I went through the day. I kind of just let it be. I felt nervous, but like I said before, I have really embraced that. And I just kind of let myself feel that. And I was sitting in the chair before the competition. I before I really was that excited to compete. After I'd read the climb, after I was like, "Oh gosh, okay, well, here we go." And I went inside and I just sat with that feeling, that stomach churning, pulse quickening feeling. I felt a little bit of nausea and I was just thinking, when in most people's lives do they have the opportunity to feel this way? When do most people care enough about something and put themselves in a pressure filled environment that makes them feel this way, that releases adrenaline? Like, I can do really fucking crazy things when I have like adrenaline pumping through my body. But not everyone even gets the opportunity to feel that. So it's kind of just like sitting in that feeling and being like, okay, no matter what, this is cool. Like, this is really cool. This is not something that everyone gets to experience. And I'm feeling it and I'm feeling my body in a way that like is different from anything that I can achieve just like in the gym on my own. I'm putting myself in an environment where I really care about something. I really want something. And I have the opportunity to go out and get it, you know?
Yes, that was awesome. I I really I really connect with that. I love this idea of caring, of putting yourself in these situations where you feel like they're almost too heavy. Like you're like, this is a lot. Like I'm nervous. I care. And then somehow realizing like, oh, this is exactly what I'm here for. And I was telling you, I just got back from Mallorca and a send I just had that is in deep water soloing. Sometimes you have to kind of like traverse on jugs into like the moment. And I just was sitting there at like a no hands rest and the ocean's loud. I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like the ocean was a little bit big. Like this was a flash for me. It was tall. I was like, what am I doing? Like I shouldn't be doing this. I was like, wait, like this is literally exactly the moment that I came here for. Like this is exactly what I'm looking to do. And I think that one of the goals of all athletes, but we'll just say climbers, is you train, you get your body stronger, your mind stronger, and then you're looking for that test. Like you're looking for that moment to display it,
Yeah.
whether yourself or in front, whether to yourself or in front of a crowd. And so I love that, Melina. I love how you describe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just is such a privilege. And that is also what I have grown up always hearing from my coach back in Vertical World, Tyson Shaney. He was really, really big on the whole pressure is a privilege concept. And as a kid, you often don't really have the awareness to understand what that means. And you can be like, yeah, of course, for sure. And in the moment, it doesn't really resonate. But that's just one of those things that time and experience has led me to. At this point in my career, I don't know, I'm just grateful for everything that I get to experience, everything that I do, doing this crazy thing that most people in the world don't even understand. Like, I'm doing this competition, people don't even know that rock climbing is a sport, and I'm here in this world, in this moment, and like, I don't know, it's really special.
Pressure is a privilege. That's good. By the way, Tyson messaged me. He loved the pod. He was so excited for you, and for all the vertical world has put out a bunch of great athletes. So good job, Tyson. And I know he'll be listening to this one. So that's cool that you got a chance to shout him out. And yeah,
Yeah.
pressure is a privilege. I love that. I will remember that. Uh, okay, you're sitting in the chair. You had viewed the finals route. Can you tell us a little bit about what the finals route looked like? Because there was maybe some holds down low that gave a lot of other finalists trouble, but you didn't seem to have any troubles with them.
I did. That is false. I did have trouble, but there was a hand jam 2 clips up, a hand jam between volumes where there were no holds between them, and it was in an angle change, so it was on a steeper portion of the wall. And with practice, with a second attempt, any girl in finals could have done that sequence. It wasn't so much that it was the hardest hand jam ever. I mean, I absolutely have no idea how hand jams are graded. I'm sorry to all the crack climbers. That's just not my world. But it was probably honestly like a super easy hand jam. But none of us knew how to do it. And putting it in a nationals finals lead route, 2 clips up, was just something I think the setters maybe did to mentally throw people, especially when you read a climb like that. Because I mean, often that's what setters do, having like a jump start or something tricky in the beginning, a volume press sequence that is a little unstable. They want to make you second guess. They don't necessarily want to make you fall. This one maybe was on the more overcooked side of it, but still just something that we are not really that comfortable with. Quinn Mason, actually, I think is the more experienced crack climber of all the finalists. But the rest of us, I think, absolutely had no idea what we were doing. But there was that very low, a really committing, big, powerful move. Only a handful of moves after that. Multiple no feet, like tracking traverse sections through the top. A very big, like almost mantle press going into the head wall, and then tiny razor crimps traversing back and forth to like a dyno to the final hold. It was, I mean, talking to the setters after, they said probably around 514A, but they, yeah, they don't really know because they don't do it all bottom to top. I think they said 13D, 14A, but it could be on either end. And it was by far the hardest and most physical route and trickiest route that we'd ever gotten. It was hard to sequence. It looked like a World Cup climb, which is what we're all supposed to be preparing for anyway. And I think that it was cool having the opportunity to get on something that stylistically was so different from anything we've ever seen before. But it did really throw people a lot. A lot.
You climbed really confidently through the crack climbing part. I was watching you live, and I was worried just because so many of the women had fallen on that, and they clearly had more fight to give, and they just you know couldn't suss that weird hand jam that was
Yeah.
probably 5'9" or something.
I mean, probably. I don't know how they're graded, but probably. Yeah, I mean, I felt not that awesome in it, but for me, it was like, just leave it all out there. I can't be bummed if I fall on the crack and I tried as hard as I could. That's just how I feel about climbing in general. If I get to a move, I try as hard as I can and I fall, then there's nothing else I could have done. So I approached the crack with that mindset, even though it's only 2 clips up, which freaks people out. It was like, for me, I was like, I'm just gonna put my hand in there. I'm gonna make it as big as I can. It's gonna suck, and then I'm just gonna keep climbing because that's just all I can do.
There's a subtle difference though about leaving it all out there and uh, using kind of like the intended beta and committing to I say intended, it's just a crack. Everyone did a little bit differently, but there was women who definitely tried as hard as they could, and they chose to elevator door it, like not hand jam it, and just like what made you decide to commit to using it as a hand jam versus trying to kind of I don't want to say hack it, but do something different.
I knew what the route setters wanted us to do. I trusted them. After I did the bullshit that I did in semifinals, I was like, you know what? I think that they're onto something. I'm just gonna do what they want me to do. And I also know that historically I have not been able to hand jam like ever in my life, which you'd think would be an incentive to not try to hand jam. But I feel like I just wanted to be like, no, now is the time. Like, yeah, I'm gonna like just commit and I'm gonna do it. And like, I'm just gonna have some balls right now and just actually do it. And I did it and it felt awesome. And I was like, I feel like sometimes when you do something hard down low, it really liberates you to just YOLO it through the rest of the climb. And that was kind of how I felt. I got through that section. I was like, word, all right, that was weird and hard, but now I'm free to just do what I do.
Well, it went well. I'm embarrassed that I didn't remember that you topped it. Please forgive me.
It's okay.
And I did clip those chains out there. Don't take that. I thought it sounds like a really cool route because I do like when there is something mentally challenging down low. It can get you shook, or you can take something positive from it, and then you start getting pumped. The angle eases off, but the holes get thin. I always struggle with that, where all of a sudden it's like razors, but the angle's better. So you have to really get on your feet, but you're so pumped that it's hard to like almost feel the crimps, and then having to do that big dynamic move at the end and really just lay it all out there for the finish. That sounds like fun. Sounds like a great
It
route.
was a really, really fun climb. Probably the most fun climb I've ever done in a competition. So props to the setters. But there was one moment almost to the head wall where you had to do a feet first sequence, swing the heel over and cross under to a hold. And that was the exact move that I didn't commit to at team trials earlier this year. And because of that, I did not like, I fell low and didn't do well on the climb at all because I just like couldn't commit to the sequence. And this time I was like, I will get there and I will do it the right way and I will redeem myself. So there was that. And also, it just got harder from there, which I did not anticipate. I thought that the move getting onto the head wall was the hardest move of the climb by far. And I know when I get to a head wall that I'm going to the top. I feel like there was not really a doubt in my mind. I'm great at grabbing tiny crimps, and when the ankle eases up, I'm like, yeah, this is happening. So I feel like that mentally was not the hardest part for me, but it was just like keeping it together, move, move, move. And I didn't really feel the pump just because I was so in it. I felt like I was gonna throw up when I lowered down just because I always do when I try really hard. But I just felt so present and focused that I didn't feel pump at all at any point on the climb, which was actually really cool.
Is that typical for you in finals where you
Yes.
get so zoned in? Wow.
Yeah. I not always, but often where I just don't notice anything else happening. And then I get down and I'm like, wow, I feel like shit. But on the wall, it's like nothing can phase me.
When you are on the head wall or where you're, or, when you're really in that zoned in moment, or not moment, but whole pitch, what what are you really focusing on each of those moves? Like, are you looking at where to grab the next crimp? Like, just where is your mind in that kind of flow state?
Yeah, it's for me it's like almost breaking it into segments, the lead route kind of subconsciously, where I'm kind of identifying the next sequence of a few moves to a next hold where I'm going to assess. Obviously, I've read from the ground, I know what I'm planning on doing the whole time, but it's like breaking it up into almost like staying in your bubble, where it's like I'm not thinking from clip 3, oh, how do I get to the top? Because I can't like get ahead of myself like that. It's like I need to do the next 3 moves like this, and then I'm going to do them. Like thinking about each individual move, doing a shake, and then committing to executing every single move. And then I do a handful of moves. I get to the next rest point or a point where I can refocus, recollect, relax a little bit, reset, and then I'm looking at the next clip, the next 2 clips. How am I going to do the next sequence? And it's never a matter of will I do the next sequence? It's always how am I going to do it? And that's kind of my mindset there, but it's never like where did everyone else get? How high do I need to get to secure what spot? It's like how do I do what I'm about to do?
Let's say you take a breath, you're about to enter into the head wall, we'll just say, and you go, okay, like looking at the sequence, I'm going to grab this one here, I'm going to cross here. What happens when you have this sequence in mind and then you grab a hold and you're like, oh, like this is bad. Like this was way worse than I thought it was going to be. And maybe it casts doubt on the next move. Like, how do you handle that in the moment?
I think a lot of that is, I mean, adaptability, obviously, but like it comes down to how you've trained that aspect specifically. For me, a lot of times it comes down to like resetting, like completely resetting from whatever position I'm in, from whatever hold I'm grabbing. It's like a full inhale and exhale just to kind of clear my head. Because I feel like also when you're like trying at your limit, you get kind of like hazy brain. You get your judgment gets blurred a little bit and you can do things and act or do movements in ways that are either less efficient or that you wouldn't read from the ground. But for me, it's all about the reset and not putting any emotional weight into anything being weird or harder. It's about how do I confront the problem immediately at hand, not how does this obstacle prevent me from getting to the top. It's like easy to spiral, especially on a rope, because you're just up there and you have one chance. And a lot of people focus on that one chance. But a lot of it comes down to like, yeah, it's going to be hard. You have to know it's going to be hard. You have to expect it's going to be hard. That's where I've gone wrong before is like expecting that it isn't going to feel that bad or that I should be getting to the top. So why is it feeling hard? It's like you just have to embrace the fact that things are going to feel worse than they maybe appear, and you just have to grab them. Or maybe you do a sequence a little bit weirdly, but you know that you can do the sequence that way. Like sometimes you do it wrong, but you know that you can do it wrong, and you just have to accept what you're doing and believe that you can. And sometimes you do something a little wrong and you can't do it that way, and you have to climb down a little bit, and you have to recognize that just because you did it a little wrong and had to trace your steps back doesn't mean that you can't now do the climb. I don't know. There's so many factors, and lead is, I think, for me more convoluted than bouldering. It's always posed a bigger mental challenge for me than bouldering has, but a lot of it is just in the moment. How do I wipe the slate clean and then just keep going?
All right, that idea of resetting or wiping the slate clean is really important. And because I will spiral. I think we all will. You grab a pinch and you're like, I heard this was a jug or it looked like a good hold, and then it's bad, and then you just instantly. I feel like my heart rate just jumps like 30 beats per minute. Like I'm just like, oh my god,
And I think
I'm gonna fall.
that often happens, I think, in the flash format qualifier rounds. If you talk to other people and they tell you that a hold isn't so bad or something like that, I used to like put a lot of weight into that, and then I'd get to a move and be like, wait, this person said it wasn't bad, but for me it's feeling not that good right now, so what's up with that? And that was another part of like not, I don't know. I look at it from the ground and I expect everything to be the worst version of itself. I expect it to be really hard. I expect every move to be really hard and to require 100% of my focus. And if it isn't, then I'm just pleasantly surprised.
I was actually talking to Ross Fulkerson about that exact thing, and he's always adamant about you can visualize it and then visualize that it's going to be worse than you think, because if you're pleasantly surprised, great, but like you better to not be badly surprised that it's way worse than you
Yeah.
thought it was going to be. And so that's a good advice. Okay, you clip the chains. You gave a great little post interview. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I just remember seeing
I
you
don't
just,
either.
you were just happy, and you said something along the lines of this comp felt good, versus, you didn't say in comparison to the previous comp, but just having talked to you, I recognize that you were kind of expressing like, this was a good one for me. Yeah, it seemed like you were happy both with how it felt internally as well as the result, clearly. Uh, and then you had a day off, and then bouldering
No,
started.
the
Oh,
next
was
day
it the
was
next
immediately in.
day? Oh,
Yeah, it was kind of brutal. The boys didn't have any days off. They went lead quali, lead semifinal, then boulder quali, then boulder semifinal, 4 consecutive days, which is what we all had at team trials earlier in the year. And we had the lead quali and then a rest day, but then back to back to back after that.
oof. Uh, okay, I was going to ask you what that mental state and prep was between winning lead and then going into bouldering and having to basically go from, you're wiping the slate clean again. No expectations. I'm showing up, but I didn't realize it was literally just the next morning or the next day. Yeah, take me
Yeah,
to
it
that
was
little gap period.
bright and early the next morning. And I also feel like this competition strategically, I went into bouldering qualification not focused at all. Like I didn't even try to get into the mindset. My only goal for the round was just to have fun. And I climbed really unfocused. I was blowing attempts left and right, honestly, and it felt good just to have one day where I was like, I can't do this 3 days in a row. I can't be at my absolute pinnacle focused as like it just is so mentally draining that doing lead qual or semis, lead finals, boulder qualies, boulder semis, and boulder finals back to back to back. It's just too much. And I tried to do that at team trials and I totally crashed. I like couldn't even perform at all in team trials boulder finals because it was the sixth round in 4 days and I was crashing. I didn't have anything left to give. And I was like, I'm going to take a gamble right now. And I am going to go into bouldering probably not my best, not the best version of myself competitively. And if the results don't reflect, like, I don't need to win this round. I need to have fun and I need to give myself a little bit of breathing room. And I know that that is a luxury, but it's also a luxury that I've worked really hard for, you know? I've worked hard enough where I trust that I can go into this round and just have fun and make it through. And maybe that sounds arrogant, but I knew strategically that I needed to give myself that lull, that downtime, that and I did stupid things and it was okay and I didn't beat myself up about it. And then I was able to go into the following day bouldering semis and finals with a renewed sense of energy and focus, and it really was a gamble that paid off for me.
I like that you described it as a gamble.
I mean, good people were not making it into semifinals. It was like there were no guarantees, and there never are. And it wasn't that I thought that I could coast in. It wasn't that I thought that I deserved to be in semifinals every time. It was just that I knew that if I wanted to have my best showing the following day, I was going to need to take a risk on qualification day, and I trusted myself.
Okay, so you have a epic day on lead where you did semis and top to finals route, really tried hard. It's decently late in the day. I'm curious about how you slept. Did you journal? Sometimes when I get so psyched, even or if I even get so tired, sometimes it's like hard for me to sleep, which sounds weird, but you get, I don't know, it's almost like you tap into something deeper and your body's just flushed with adrenaline. So on both those times, so between lead finals and Boulder qualies, and then that night of Boulder qualies before you had to do semis and finals for Boulder, you know, what was your routine like to, I don't know, did you try to calm yourself down? Did you journal? What were those 2 nights like?
I feel like I made the mistake of just trying to go to sleep as quickly as I could. And I also have a lot of trouble sleeping well after I have a high adrenaline day. So it was hard and I felt really tired in Boulder Quali's day. But then I had the rest of the day because we went early in the morning. I had the rest of the day to have downtime to just kind of, yeah, to journal about everything, to snack and lay on the couch. And I don't know. I think that it's hard to find those windows sometimes in a really tight schedule, stacked back to back rounds type comp, and you just have to seek those out for yourself. And I think that it can be seen as selfish sometimes to be like, I need to take this time. Like, my family members are out to see me, and I am like, I need to go be alone right now. And it's just something that I have to do. I have to make time for myself. I have to prioritize myself. It really is a form of self-care just to lie in bed or to like do my whole skincare routine. It's like everything is happening around me and I'm like, no, I need to do my face wash, and then I need to do my toner, and then I need to do my moisturizer, because it just makes me feel normal and it just makes me feel calm and soothed. And maybe it isn't the priority and maybe there are bigger things happening, but for me that is one thing that like tethers me to routine and normalcy.
Can I ask you what you journaled about or like how you prompted yourself? Or I know it's your personal journal, but can you share whatever you can about what those entries looked like?
For me, it's less about what I did and more about how I felt at this point. And I mostly wrote, I mean, honestly, I didn't have a lot of energy. I think journaling can be so draining. I mean, the way, especially I described to you. So it was pretty surface level during a competition. Oftentimes during a comp, I won't journal at all unless I feel like I really need to suss something out or get something off my chest. So for me, it was more like lead finals went well, felt good, good flow. It was like very brief, but more just to do it. Oh, one thing that I did throughout the comp that was like really clutch. One of the benefits of having it in Salt Lake is that I saunaed, I think, 3 or 4 times throughout the duration of the comp, which was only 5 days long. Immediately after lead qualifiers, I walked to the bouldering project, which is 1 block away, and I sat in the sauna for 30 minutes and meditated. And then immediately, I mean, the second day after, because there was a rest day, so I saunaed that day. And then after Boulder qualies, I also went to the sauna. I just like, it's a quiet space. Again, one of those things that could be seen as greedy, as all my friends and family are like going to get lunch. I'm alone in the dark in the sauna. But I seek out opportunities for as much recovery as possible because I was also prioritizing that. And I do think that all of that paid off because I felt physically great the last day of the competition, better than I felt physically any other day. And I think it's because I was taking the downtime mentally and prioritizing the physical recovery throughout the comp too. I know that was a little bit of a tangent.
I I love sauning, and I think one of the things about it that's restorative is that you can't bring your phone in, or at least the sauna I go into is too hot, and so there's no phone. So you kind of have to be alone with your thoughts. So I think that's really cool. Um, I I I kind of want to ask a little bit more on this journaling because you said something like you don't normally journal in competitions unless you have something to get off your chest or to suss out. And the reason why that stood out to me is that what how do you know when you have something to get off your chest, or how do you know when there's something that is worth journaling on? Because I think that that might seem obvious to you, like because it's like such a tool that you use. You're like, no, I have this journal to work through things. But how do you know when there's something that's like, picking at you? That's like, hey, Melina, like we need to talk about this. Melina needs to talk to Melina.
I think a lot of it is anything that is shaking my confidence in myself. And this comp, there wasn't anything at any moment, and even the rounds they didn't win did not affect how I felt or how I saw the next rounds going. Previously, there have been comps. I remember 2021 nationals was like the first open nationals that I like really went into feeling like good and like I was a contender for team, and I was so in my head about results, and then on the final lead climb I like totally crumbled and was not able to like, that's something that's happened before where I am so good when I know no one else has done something, and the second someone else does it and I have to be the second person to do it, then I like boulder or route, if I know it's been done, then I don't know. I've had like spirals before, and then I did. And immediately after, I felt so shaken that I wanted to book a flight home before bouldering. And I was like, yeah, just super, just gut reaction. It was impulsive, and I didn't. And then I stayed and I won my first bouldering national championship. But I was so seriously considering leaving that I felt like I had to come to an understanding about like a what transpired, b why did it maybe happen, and c where do we go from here in a very short amount of time. So that was an instance where it felt necessary, but in previous comps where like, I mean, after lead semis I didn't feel like, oh no, I can't do I can't do it tonight. It was more like I can do it, I just have to trust myself and let it happen. And this whole comp it felt like, I don't know, I just felt a lot more mentally stable, and I just didn't care about the results to a point where any result at any point in the comp affected me mentally.
Okay, you did some amazing foreshadowing there about topping a boulder that you know someone else has topped before. Uh, so I watched all of nationals, and lead climbing was incredible, and I was cheering for you when you clipped those chains and took the win.
And it seared itself as a memory in your brain of me clipping the chains and you never forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I gotta tell you though, bouldering was quite exciting. Bouldering was that one really did sear itself in my brain, and I do remember you topping boulder number 4. Yeah, can you share a bit more about maybe semis and then how bouldering finals went, because it was an exciting finals.
Yeah, bouldering semis. Here's the weird thing. I am. I told you I'm a little superstitious, but I also am like kind of a data nerd. So I did all 4 boulders in qualies, but realistically, there was one boulder where like I didn't feel like I topped it, and I watched the video back, and it like didn't really look like I topped it, and it didn't make a difference because I would have been in semis either. But I was like kind of falling away from the wall while I was holding the hold, which I like didn't feel good about, and I kind of wanted to do it again, but like that's just not what you do, you know. I was like, okay, they gave it to me. I want to do it again, but I'm not gonna like appeal against myself. So yeah, I would have been in semis regardless, but that top, it was number 4, and last year in bouldering nationals in qualifiers, I didn't top number 4. And then I came out for semis, and the first climb was a slab, which I've been working on a ton, and I didn't top it, and it made me absolutely so mad that I don't know. I felt like I was fine. I knew I was gonna top the rest. I never like waver in my confidence in myself, but at the same time I was like, God damn, like I've been working so hard. I built a slab in my garage and I still can't do the slab climb. But last year it was the overhang was first, and I'd been working so much on my overhang, and I knew I could do everything else, but I was like, dang, I didn't do the power boulder. That was like the one thing I've been working on. And I got so mad that I did the rest of the boulders in the round. And I was the only person going into finals with 3 tops. And then this year, I was so frustrated about the slab, and then I was the only top on Boulder 2, which was like really powerful strength slopers, and then topped 3 and 4, which put me as the only person with 3 tops going into finals again. And I was like, wow, that is a really weird coincidence. Like, these things, I don't know why I like even noticed it or how I noticed it, but in that moment, I was like, I'm going to top every boulder in finals, because last year I topped every boulder in finals and the pattern continues. It's just pattern recognition at this point. So I knew I was going to top every boulder in finals. I felt really, really great about semifinals. I felt like I left it all out there, and I love opportunities to like try really, really hard physical climbs, because I feel like that's what I train for, is like being able to get on things that push me to my limit. And that is usually a semis type thing. In finals, it's usually like more, they want more tops, they want people topping more quickly. But semis is where they have the boulder where only one person tops it, or one person topped our number 2, and only Quinn Mason and I topped number 3. And they just had 2 like pretty heinous power climbs back to back that it just felt really, really good. And I felt after that round like I was completely satisfied with my nationals performance. I was like, no matter how finals goes, I have done absolutely everything that I've set out to do. I have checked every box. I have shown myself that I can do all these things. And I was like, wait, but not the slab box. The slab box remains unchecked. So I still had something that I needed to accomplish in finals. And I knew that, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, I know if I choose to do it, I'm going to go out and do it. If I choose, it's the same thing that Alex told me when I was going out for lead. She was like, are you choosing to do the climb? And I was like, yeah, I'm choosing to get to the top of the climb. And in boulders, I wasn't that psyched when I went into ISO, and then we all previewed the climbs, and I looked at every single climb and I was like, wow, that doesn't look like something that I'm that good at. And the next one I was like, that doesn't look like something I'm that good at either. Every single climb I identified something where I have previously had problems, but that I've worked really hard on. And I was like, okay, this is like the final test. This round is going to test if I have been able to elevate my weaknesses, each one of my weaknesses, to a level where it's like still competitive with the rest of the field. And that was a really, really cool opportunity. And I also hadn't really been on my like flash game throughout the rest of the comp. And I have worked really hard on flashing specifically. So I challenged myself in ISO, one of those things that we talked about, like creating challenges for yourself. I was like, I want this to be a flash round. And I want to go and I want to flash every boulder, which I did not succeed in. But it still was like, it was a completely different type of challenge. So different from semis where it's like, go out, balls to the wall. Can you do it or not? It was like, can you execute every single climb when you know, I mean, you know what you have to do. You know how long other people are taking. You know basically how other people are performing. And I know that I say that I don't care about other people, but when you listen to the crowd and every person goes out one by one and you know how long they take, it's pretty obvious what you need to do. And that was another hurdle that I feel like was like the final frontier for me.
Something that really stuck out in my head from our last chat is you said something along the lines of every woman in finals has the ability to do all the boulders
I believe
given
that.
maybe given enough time, but even that, even if it's given enough time, that means actually if you're able to do a boulder, theoretically you can flash it too, right? Just if you're
Yeah, right.
physically able, then it could be done your first try. And so it is interesting hearing you talk about like the difference between semis and finals and this idea that finals is maybe more about execution. And so I'll set a little bit of the stage here where there's four boulders and you flashed the first three of them, so your flash game was on point. And Chloe Koskoy also sent those three boulders. She did not flash them all. And it sounds like maybe you were aware of how well she was doing. And then boulder number 4 came, and Chloe, either she flashed it
She
or she did
flashed
it.
it.
She flashed it, and you were coming up after Chloe. So how much were you aware of what was going through your head? Just take me to that moment, because it was I was watching it with sweaty hands and cheering for you. Sorry, Chloe, I was cheering for you, Melina. So how'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, Chloe's a baller for flashing that climb. That was a really, really impressive flash. I mean, just in general, a really impressive performance all around. I love competing against her. But I didn't know how many tries, and I was trying my hardest not to keep track of that, like how quickly she was doing every climb. But I had the awareness that she had done them all. And that is a pretty unique position to be in, to be like, I have to do the boulder. Like, I just have to do the boulder. And yeah, I was going out for each climb, I don't know, one shot, one kill. I just felt like I was like really, really prepared to do that. And I wanted to show that I was able to. Um, so I was executing really well, which did give me some leeway on the last climb. But I could tell she did it quickly. And I wasn't thinking about attempts at all, actually, because mainly I was just thinking about I needed to get the top. I that was literally the only thing I was thinking of. In ISO, I saw myself grab that finish hold 100 times. I saw myself grab it over and over and over again and hang on to it every single different way that you could. Sometimes I was hitting it perfectly spot on. Sometimes I was hitting it not right and then reeling it in and just like owning it. And I knew I was going to do it. It was only a matter of when. And I did feel like in the beginning, I had a couple first attempts that were not my best. So I knew that I had to turn it on, and I knew I just had to execute and do it exactly how the setters wanted. I feel like I rushed a little bit in the beginning and I was getting a little ahead of myself. But one of the things I've been practicing the most, which we've talked about, is resetting. And that looks different in lead than it does in bouldering a little bit. But at the end of the day, when you have 4 minutes, it's about how do you lower your heart rate, how do you control your breathing, and how do you not spiral, how do you not panic. I knew I could do it. My third attempt, I hit it, but I had kind of messed around with the moves for long enough where I didn't have enough energy to stick it. But I also knew from that moment that if I got immediately back on, then I wasn't going to do it. So it's another one of those gambles. Like, how much time do you allot to do the move when it is a coordination boulder? When there is another coordination move ahead of it, then maybe I stick and maybe I don't. Because I wanted to give myself the opportunity to try it multiple times if I needed to. But at the same time, it's like, how much do I trust myself? How sure am I that I'm going to do that move and then the last move? And what I ended up doing to really force myself to take a breath is I just knelt down and I just breathed for a few moments and I let the clock tick down. And I feel like that is one of the main ways that you get in control of yourself and your brain, and you just watch the clock go because you are like in control of your timing. The clock doesn't control you, you control your own timing. And I let it tick down until I knew that I was ready to give a burn, and then I knew I was ready to stick both of those moves. I didn't want to get on leaving any chance that I wasn't going to do it.
Sports action. It was it was so good. I was watching, and I think that you had to top it within 5 attempts. Was what I remember. I saw you do a first attempt, and you looked good. I actually thought, like your first attempt, it looked
It
okay.
was okay. It was
It was
okay.
okay. I mean, I just believed in the flash. And then was it your second attempt where you kind of tried some different baiting?
Yeah, but I don't regret that. I mean, would I regret it if I had taken too many attempts? Who knows? But sometimes you just got to do try things that are outside the box and it works a lot of the time. And I do think that that could have worked. However, it would have been the dumber, harder way to do it. And I figured that out when I tried it one time.
And then it seemed like you kind of rushed a little, pulled back on, did okay, and kind of fumbled the end. I'm this is all steered in my head, so I may be remembering it wrong, but this is just what I
No, this
kind of
is all
remember.
right.
Okay, and you just like I was watching, and of course, this is just me watching, but I just was like, oh, she looks a little shook. Like you kind of rushed, you kind of like weren't climbing like you had climbed the previous three, and then that moment where you stopped, calmed down, and then when you pulled back on, you climbed beautifully. And I don't know, yeah, how when you did that last attempt where you trusted yourself to have rest and execute perfectly, what did that attempt feel like?
I knew with 100% confidence that I was going to do it at that point. And I knew that if I pulled on earlier, I would not have felt that confident, which is why I had to pace myself. And you're right, I definitely did. The attempt before was definitely rushed. And I was feeling the time pressure more than I was feeling the attempt pressure because you don't really know. But I was watching, I knew the clock was ticking. 4 minutes is not a long time. It doesn't give you that many attempts realistically. So I knew the clock was ticking. I knew I had to do it. I spent a lot of time trying to do the last move, getting my feet up in different ways. And then when I finally committed, just didn't have the juice. And yeah, I have been in that position before. That same nationals I was talking about before, the first bouldering open nationals I ever won, I went out to my fourth boulder knowing someone else had done it and assumed that I had to do it to win, which was a false assumption, and I completely caved. I didn't even like my first attempt was absolutely terrible, not even close to zone, and then I never figured out the top. And it wasn't necessarily the hardest climb. I just was not able to kind of reel it in mentally, which is one of the reasons why. I mean, I told you I take nuggets away from every comp that I do, every climb I attempt. And that was a key takeaway that I need to be so locked in those final moments and I can't let myself spiral. I can't let myself feel like I have to do something to win, which is like, again, you know that you have to do it to win, but how do you prioritize something else above that? And for me, having visualized myself grab that finished hold over and over and over again, I didn't care where I stood on the podium. What I cared about more than anything was just grabbing that hold because I knew how it felt. I knew what it felt like. I knew how it felt to stick it, but I hadn't done it yet.
Between that third attempt, the rest, and then sending with 100% certainty on your fourth attempt, did you feel like you started to spiral and then you nipped it in the bud and took that?
Yeah.
Interesting. What
Yeah.
did that, when you say you felt yourself start to spiral, or what does that look like internally? And what did how'd that training kick in to take a breath?
I it was more it's hard to describe, but I feel like it's almost like my vision gets blurry around the edges, which seems like a video game character with low health or something. But I feel like I was things just were moving quickly by me and the clock looked like it was racing down and I could feel my heart was pounding, which higher heart rate isn't a bad thing, but you know the sweet spot and it was beyond the sweet spot. I felt all the signs, but I I don't know. I've been practicing a lot. I've been practicing recognizing those moments. A lot of it has been on a lead wall, but it does translate in that way where things start rushing by, things get hazy, and that is a cue. And for me, it felt very similar to that. I I don't know. Sometimes in the moment, you don't really know what happens. A lot of it I remember, and a lot of it I remember it as if I was watching it externally. probably because I watched the videos so many times. But a lot of what I felt and what I saw in that moment, I don't really remember, which isn't that helpful. But
Melina, when I was watching and I was watching you get shook and then maybe spiral and then bring it all back and then execute perfectly to win it, like it was, I mean, it's why I wanted to talk to you again, because it was absolutely incredible. I just, again, just amazing job at preparing yourself and then executing in the more, or not just executing, but doing that preparation and then having it play out. I was just so happy for you because it really aligned with everything you talked about. And it's one thing to talk about it, it's another to put into practice.
yeah, I really try to like live by the words that I say cuz yeah, you're right. It is really easy to say all these things. It's easy to preach, and I don't ever want to be someone who just preaches. I want to like at least try to live by what I say and what I believe. But it was a very cool opportunity to be confronted by all these obstacles that I've been very specifically training for. And that also required kind of a shift in perspective, being like, every single thing that's happening right now is what I would have considered worst case scenario before. Like, this is this is weird and this is not my strength, or it hasn't been before, but now instead of it being something that I dreaded, it was an opportunity over and over and over again. I was like, I have the opportunity to show that the work I've done is paying off here. I have the opportunity to put my training on display for everyone, which is really vulnerable, but to be like, this is what I think, this is what I believe, this is how I train. Can I stand up to the test right now? Can I show that what I do and what I believe in is like that I'm on the right path? And yeah, I may not be a master at any of these things, but I feel like the growth that I've done in the past training cycle, I just feel really excited about taking that and running with it for future competitions. Because I feel like, although I'm very satisfied with this competition, I feel like there were so many ways that I learned that I could grow from it. There are so many ways that I'm not fit enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not mentally resilient enough that I can improve upon. And yeah, it was enough for this competition, but I see so much potential for growth still. And that's a really exciting place to be.
You made that such a perfect segue into what I want to ask you about future goals, but I gotta ask you a few more things. First of all, something that I gotta point out is that when we talk about training and living by the words you say and then executing on it in that specific way, I just want to point out that training isn't enough either. Like, you have to believe in your training. How do I say that? It's like you can show up, you can hear this podcast, you can hear Melina talk about journaling, and you can go journal. You can go, do all the things that, supposedly work. But if you're not somehow deeply committed to them, it doesn't work either. Just like in that moment, it doesn't work in your training. You can't just say the words, do the 5 sets of 5 reps. There's something subtly different there about deeply embracing every moment of the training in the so that you can execute when the moment shows up.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it really comes down to intention. And that was one of the biggest ways that my training changed from previous cycles to this past one is showing up every single day and every rep of every set or every time I got on the wall or even every single time I meditated. It was like, either I'm going to do it and do it right and believe in it and try and get absolutely everything I can out of it, or I'm not going to do it at all. What is the point of me staying here? I used to go to the gym and just drag it out and beat myself down for hours, and I didn't feel like I was gaining that much from it. However, more recently, what I've learned, like Arnold Schwarzenegger says, is one rep with intention is better than 10 reps just to do them. That's not a direct quote, but I that really resonates with me, that whole concept of do it to the best of your ability, do it to get everything out of it that you can, because otherwise you can do 10 of them and it isn't really, you're just wasting your own time.
This is some of my pushback on some of the like training love of finding the exact intensity for how many sets and reps. And it's not that it's wrong to, I'm sure science will show that there are certain ways to train that are more optimal than others, but it's almost like that's the icing where if you just show up and do your best and crimp the hardest you can on the hangboard for 2 minutes, that's your thing. If you really put it all out there, you'll do way better than someone who has the best science training program but doesn't really care, just kind of half-asses it. And
Yeah.
it's actually something I remember AJ talking about when we did an episode. She said something like she takes breaks. Like if she's not feeling it, then she's not going to go in and half-ass. Like what's the point?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
I
love that.
think, yeah, it's really, I mean, I love exercise science. I think that it can be such a valuable tool, but you can really get bogged down and you can also really get in your head about it. Because if you feel like you constantly need to be optimizing and you're so focused on the optimization that you lose sight of the big picture and the effort, then it can be almost like mentally debilitating. You get to an event and you're like, what if this week I didn't do this perfectly and I got sick this one time, so like it wasn't the most efficient training cycle ever. I mean, I've been in that place too where you want to control every variable, and in a perfect world, sure, maybe you can, but I don't feel that hasn't been the best way for me to structure my plans. And giving myself the freedom to adapt. And sometimes, some days I go on and I'm like, I can push harder than my workout and I'm going to do this much more and I'm just going to rip in the gym because I feel great. And some days being like, I don't feel that awesome. I am going to just do slab movement because I feel like I can give 100% of myself to that, but I couldn't give 100% of myself to deadlifting today. So my priority is just being adaptable, shifting, and being able to give 100% to everything that you do in any given day, even if it's not what you initially planned. I think that is so critical to like having confidence in yourself when the moment comes.
Yeah, that's that foundation. That I love when you said don't get bogged down in the details. I always think of this. Can't remember who said this, so I won't attribute it, but it was don't major in the minors. You know, don't get obsessed with the tiny little minutia. And I think about that often. Okay, you did still give a good segue, but I have to ask one more thing before we move on from nationals. You said that you said that perhaps you've been seeing it from a third person because you were watching so many videos of it, and I want to know more about that. Have you been watching videos of yourself on Boulder number 4 or in nationals, and if so, why?
I watch I've watched all of the live streams from every climb where I felt good about it. And I think, yeah, I know in a lot of sports you watch videos of the times when it didn't go as well because you try and analyze it and you want to see what went wrong. But for the most part, I know what went wrong, and I've watched the videos once to try and get a sense of understanding, like rope semifinals. I watched the video and I already knew what the issue was. I saw it happen and saw what it looked like externally, and I was like, okay, I gained some information there, but I'm not gonna spend time watching this over and over again because I don't want to imprint my failures into my psyche, you know? I want to constantly have moments of success and flow and pure focus that I can pull upon when I'm going kind of into like my mental bank account trying to remember what that feels like. And I spend a lot of time rewatching. I mean, shoot, I go back and I watch the first comp that I ever really performed well at in my open career was an Albuquerque North America Cup in 2021, which is very specific. Most people probably don't remember that comp at all, but for me, it was like a very pivotal turning point and a moment where I felt complete flow kind of for the first time in my career. And I've gone back and I've watched the live stream for that even before this comp, even during this last nationals. I went and I watched that live stream, which seems kind of crazy, but like I like having those images fresh in my mind, not because I'm stuck in the past and not because I feel like those were the glory days or that like that was the pinnacle, but because I like mental refreshers of, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I know what I'm doing. I know how to get in the flow. This is what I do. And the more I can instill that into my brain, the more confidence I have in myself every single time I step into the mats.
That's interesting. I like that. I often think about this concept of success begets success, and it's something about it's just this interesting thing of not necessarily dwelling on your failures. I like it was that learn and let go. And it actually, I was going to ask you, how does that mindset look when you have good stuff happen? Like, what do you take from that? And so you just answered it. And that makes me feel better about watching videos of myself sending that. So I guess I'm not the only one.
No, I think that it's really good psychologically, and I do think that yeah, you have a lot to learn from your failures, and I do learn from them and I journal about them, but I never even read back my journal entries about those things because I feel like I don't know, I just don't want to relive it. I don't feel like there's a need to relive it. I put myself in an environment where there's positive reinforcement constantly, and I feel like that has been kind of the key to my own confidence.
Okay. Congrats again on winning both bouldering and lead for the second year in a row. It was incredible. And I'm really happy that it seemed to be a comp that you also enjoyed deeply internally, not just the result. And uh, I'm just kind of curious how this win has changed your outlook on the future. I know you've been doing some outdoor bouldering. I know you have a trip planned. I'm guessing this is a big step towards qualifying for the World Cup season. Just how did this last comp change, or if at all, your look towards the future?
Yeah, I feel like winning it didn't necessarily change my outlook. It was more just the feeling of competition, and I haven't been competing that frequently this year, and it made me miss it a lot. And I feel like I've been seeking out so many more opportunities just because I feel like the more I get into that mindset, the more easily it comes every single time. So it's inspired me to want to compete more and more often at more different types of competitions. I like putting myself out there, and I feel really good about my own outlook on competing and results and placement and all of that. So I kind of want to just keep working on it because I don't feel like I'm anywhere close to done. It's not something that I'm going to stop. It's something that I'm going to keep working on and keep ironing out because I have a lot of progress left to go there. I feel really excited about climbing outside. I have gone on like 3 outdoor trips, like very brief trips since nationals, and I am leaving for Bishop tomorrow, and I feel really inspired to do a lot of things. Often after comps, especially, I mean, it used to be like nationals is the pinnacle, which now I know that there's many, many things beyond nationals, but it used to be like I would do this comp and I would be training for it and I'd be working so hard and then it would happen and then I'd feel very lost afterward. But for this event, I feel like I went into it having goals beyond it afterward and competition and outdoor goals that were inspiring me just beyond just the competition, which is really good for me mentally to kind of disperse my interest so that I'm always pushing and I'm always excited about the next thing. And I don't put all my pressure on performance in one event. So yeah, I'm psyched on a lot of things. I'm psyched on more competition, more types of competition, putting myself out there more often. And I'm excited to explore kind of this new frontier, which is outdoor bouldering and potentially outdoor lead climbing in the future also. It just feels new and exciting, which at this point in my career, I feel like I've done a lot. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of things, and it's cool to have an entirely unexplored new avenue of climbing that I don't know, it just feels like I'm getting to start it all again.
Yeah, you had some success this month outdoors as well. I There was a bunch of double digit sends, but the one that stood out just because of the number was, I'm blanking on it. Was it mean green or was it green
Green in
something?
the face.
Green in the face. Okay,
Yeah.
a V13 that you did second try but almost flashed. Was that or
I was
did
like
yeah?
pretty bummed about that honestly. Yeah, I should have gone up and touched all the holds before I got on probably. It just was really high. I didn't have a ladder and I don't know. I didn't know how to I just have never really done this stuff before, so I feel like every time I get on the wall, I'm like, well, I'll just try as hard as I can. And then I got on, I fell kind of on the last move, the last like actual move. And it was because I don't know, I hadn't felt the hold before. I didn't hit it quite right. And then I got on and did it like immediately after, which was kind of a bummer. It would have been a very, very sick flash. But at the same time, I don't feel like there's any reason why I shouldn't flash a V13 moving forward. So I'm going to keep, I don't know, I'm going to keep getting on every time trying to flash. I feel like it just is like a good mindset to be in, to be like ready to rip your first time. Yeah, I don't know. It was a cool problem. It was very my style, but I've also been trying to do a lot more like things in like the 11, 12 range that are not really my style, just to kind of get more well-rounded. There are so many nuances to climbing outside that I'm starting to kind of appreciate, and so much about my footwork. I feel like I just have a lot of room to improve. And when I climb and whenever I do something where I feel like, oh my gosh, I have so much learning to do, it's a really, really exciting and fun feeling. I love, love, love working on my weaknesses. So, and I just feel like I have so many weaknesses outside, which is awesome. And that is inspiring me.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that footwork is something that you could get better at outside. I always think of competition climbing as being some of the most intricate, interesting footwork with really important decision making on volumes, like where do you stand on this giant, it's like you have a giant surface to stand on, but that's not, you don't just paste your foot and say, oh, it's going to land here. It's actually very intentional. And so yeah, what's the difference there in outdoors versus comp climbing?
A lot of it for me is maintaining body tension. I feel like indoors there's so much dynamic flow and so much, yeah, you're standing on things, but you're moving through them and you're jumping off of them and you're hitting things and your feet are cutting, and I love when my feet cut, but I still am working on maintaining body tension through big dead points, just doing steep climbs and keeping tension all the way from the toe up to the fingertips. And when that isn't just an in-cut crimp or a very big, very grippy surface, sometimes it's a glossy little flat thing where you have to angle your foot very deliberately. I was working on pagan poetry recently, which is a V11, and grades outside, I still feel like I'm having a hard time conceptualizing because I was like, I could do these things, which are harder grades, but this thing feels really hard. And why is that? And I had a ton of trouble specifically with one body position, like maintaining tension through kind of a bicycle where I couldn't keep my feet on until Alex actually, she is so good at movement and especially with the body tension type of movement, where she was telling me, no, you need to sink your heel or your body, you need to sink into it. That's how you get the tension. And then once you sink, you need to freeze and only move the hand. Because so much about climbing is like, or indoor climbing, comp climbing is momentum and moving all your body parts simultaneously. And I feel like from my very limited understanding of climbing outdoors, so much of it is freezing every part of your body except one limb. And that I feel like I have, I need to just practice a lot more.
That's fun. I'm sure it'll lead to you excelling indoors as well. I just, it's just
Oh, I'm
more
sure.
tools.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, has a woman flashed V13 before? Sorry, just take you back a
Yeah, I
minute.
know
I was
Brooke
just,
has. I'm not sure. I know Brooke Rabbit has. I'm not sure if other people have yet,
hmm,
but yeah, I'm not sure. I think she's flashed like four
wow,
V13s, but
good
she's
job,
also
Brooke.
like kind of one of the best ever. So
Well, it seems
yeah,
like
she's the inspo. She's the
you're,
inspo.
yeah. I don't know. It doesn't seem like you're too far off considering you just started going outside. Uh, what's the World Cup season look like to you? Are you excited to do World Cups? Are you looking to do World Cups, or is that you mentioned that you are in a good headspace and looking to compete more, and that really seems like the obvious next step for you.
Yes. Honestly, I don't know that the US team has available World Cup spots right now, at least not in bouldering. I think that there are only three spots, and Brooke, Natalia, and Annie have already claimed them. So I think that maybe the best I could do is development team. There may be a lead spot still available. everything is a little bit confusing right now. I don't know. None of that is really like something that I understand at this point. But I think it's more like take things day by day, see what opportunities come my way, and then make the decisions then. I don't know that all the decisions will be within my own personal ability.
Oh, that's that's brutal, Melina. I can't believe you could win nationals 2 years in a row and not get to showcase your abilities on the world stage representing the US.
I think that a lot of it has to do with, I mean, the way team spots are allocated, which is an IFSC ruling. But also, obviously, Brooke, Natalia, and Annie deserve to be going and doing World Cups. They've all been killing it on the international stage. And I do think that we should be sending the athletes who have been kind of tried and true. I would like to have the opportunity, but I think it'll all just, we'll see how everything pans out. And hopefully, I get to go do at least a few. I think that Salt Lake, because it's in the US, the Salt Lake World Cup will have additional quota. So for now, ideally that would be one that I'd get to do, which is in March or something. But I'm also kind of psyched on the idea of maybe going to Africa over the next summer and climbing outside for like a month.
It does not suck down there. It is
No,
really
I've
good
heard
times.
great things.
Well, I hope that you get the chance to compete in World Cups and that I don't know if your sponsors can send you. I don't know. I would love to see you continue to push yourself on that stage because it seems like I mean I know every comp is new and you can't guarantee a result based on your last comps, but it also sounds like you just thrive under new challenges. So continuing to seek out that next level, I sounds like it would be fun for you at the very least.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm excited to take whatever opportunities I get, but also just there are a lot of things I'm excited for in general. I'm really looking forward to the next season, and I'm mostly just excited to get training again. I'm excited to go to Bishop. I'm very excited, and I'm have some outdoor trips planned. But I miss the routine. I miss lifting heavy things and trying hard boulders and getting really pumped and doing drills. I prefer the training to the peaking, which maybe is an unpopular opinion, but I miss it. I really really miss it, and I've already kind of laid out my entire training schedule from now until team trials, and I'm just itching to get started again.
It makes sense if you have that intention, you fall in love with you have to fall in love with everything. Like we were saying, you have to fall in love with each rep, with
Yeah.
with every little moment. And that actually kind of reminds me of what you said when I asked you last time about how you go from good to great, and you had said effort, and just really showing up for every moment, which I thought I to be honest, that's actually something I've always been pretty good at. But then you also talked about resilience, which in this context kind of sounded like making sure that you show up with effort all the time over the long haul, even when things don't go so well. And I, me, and probably many others have struggled with that. And so, I just kind of rather than ask you again how you go from good to great because you had such an excellent answer last time, I wanted to pick more on that resilience idea and because it's something that I struggle with and how you've stayed resilient and even how when things are going so well now how you keep on showing up and doing your best even though it sounds like it would be easy when things are going well it's sometimes in some ways it's hard to really still show up when you're strong and try your absolute hardest and keep pushing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that when you see success, it is easy to get complacent um, if what you are seeking is results. But for me, a lot of what it comes down to is having a goal that is not results oriented. And I feel like I just have so much room to grow. And when you're always looking at your performance with a growth mindset, I feel like you're able to identify those things, even in a great performance. Even when you top the climb, even when you win the comp, there are always things that you can improve upon. And that is a really, really cool place to be. I've already identified, I made a list after nationals of all of the ways that I feel like I needed to improve. Every single factor that I felt was lacking at this last event, and it's like 15 things long. So I feel like the hardest thing about resilience is often that you feel like you've reached kind of an end point, if that makes sense. Either you're in a lull or you feel like you've reached this pinnacle that you've worked hard for, and where do you go from there? Um, but yeah, I feel like it's setting higher goals, setting goals that aren't necessarily placement related, and falling in love with the process of self improvement, especially when it comes to working on weaknesses. Because most people hate that. I mean, how much fun is it to go into the gym and try things that you're not that good at? It's not fun at all, usually. Um, and it does come down to reframing that whole concept as something that can be really rewarding, something where you can put effort in and see results. And the irony is that when there is something, a deficiency maybe in your performance, typically that area is where you could see results the most quickly if you were to put time and energy into that. And I feel like part of it is reframing it that way. Like, yeah, I'm not that good at slab climbing, for example, but if I were to put the same amount of energy into slab as I do to overhang, which is my strength, for example, I would probably make twice as quick of improvements on slab than I would on this thing that I'm already good at. But people really like feeling good about themselves. I mean, that's just kind of human nature. So there's that end of the spectrum, and then there's also what do you do when you're feeling unmotivated because maybe you're plateauing or even in a lull. And that is the hardest place to be, especially when you know what you've been able to do before and you've felt quicker progress before. I think, I don't know, the main thing for me, I've spent a lot of time in that space. And then after having a lot of success in 2021, 2022, I was injured. I stopped competing. I got surgery. And I felt like coming back, I was not fractionally as good as I was before. And there were so many times when I was like, I should just quit. This is kind of, I'm working this hard and busting ass to be as good as I was like a year ago. That doesn't make any sense. For me, it just is the love of the sport and forgetting the past. So much of it is about, I was talking to Alex about this recently because she had her ACL surgery, and often she says like, I feel like me again, or I feel like I kind of felt like myself. And I think when we compare ourselves constantly to who we used to be, what we used to be able to do, there's always gonna, you can always cast kind of a shadow of a doubt on your own abilities and your own progress, because could I do this before? Am I getting worse? There are so many questions that arise when you're comparing yourself to anyone, but especially for me, just myself. For me, it's about, where do I go from here? Who am I today? And how do I push that level constantly? What do I do from here to push that level higher, regardless of anything that's come beforehand? And that sometimes looks like you're on a training plan and it's working, and you just have to stick to it. And you have to accept that. I mean, if you've been doing it for a long time, you know that there are always going to be plateaus. You know that there are always going to be times when you feel like you're regressing. But a lot of times it comes down to, how long has this realistically been going on? When did I last feel good? Am I being dramatic about this? Am I being realistic with myself? If it is a really long plateau, sometimes it's worth either talking to a coach or restructuring your program, trying to get different stimuli, trying to focus more on weaknesses, something like that. But sometimes it really is just about head down doing it, putting in the work, getting dirty and just doing it. And I think that is the part of training that, I mean, the training montage is really glamorized in cinema, in media, but a lot of it is like, the work isn't going to look glamorous all the time. Sometimes you don't look good, sometimes you don't feel good. Are you showing up feeling 80% and putting in all 100% of that 80%? Because I feel like that is, I don't know, that's my philosophy. You're not going to have 100% in the tank every day, but are you showing up and doing with what you have everything that you can?
I like how you extended the not necessarily comparing yourself to others, but also not necessarily comparing yourself to, who you were 10 years ago, maybe pre-injury, and just comparing yourself maybe to the day before. Who was I yesterday? Am I progressing? And it's funny because I've been injured. We all have. And I always have this moment where I'm coming back and I suck, and I'm like, this sucks. I hate doing this. I'm weak. I'm trying hard. I'm putting all this effort and nothing's happening. And I always have this moment I kind of give up. I'm like, okay, whatever, or give up in the angry mentality. I just go, you know what? I guess this is me now. Okay, fine. And I often, like, the next time I go in, I have some session where I'm like, oh, I feel back to my old self. And it's like funny how for me, it's always like right when I kind of give up the woe is me is often when I somehow break through into the next level. So that's good.
Yeah,
Good
you can
advice.
definitely self-sabotage without even realizing it. When you feel like I'm not comparing myself to anyone else, like I'm on my own path, but in actuality I don't know, you are assuming that you can't get back to where you were, or you're constantly comparing yourself to that standard that you've set for yourself. And it's hard to change your own standards, but it really, so much of it is, do you love sending hard things or do you love effort? What makes you feel good? And what makes me feel good is obviously sending, is obviously winning. I'm human. Those things feel good, and I prefer those things to the alternative. But like I told you, I mean, on a lead route, sometimes, like in a comp, sometimes when you don't top, but you come achingly close to topping and you leave everything out there, sometimes it's the most rewarding feeling in the world. And why is why does effort, when you're not at your pinnacle level, why does that feeling have to be any different than effort at that level? Any time you're putting yourself 100% out there, realistically, it should feel the same. I know that that is like, yeah, it should, but maybe it doesn't. I mean, we're humans. We understand what grades are and what winning is and what comps are. But at the end of the day, it's like effort is effort. And we do this because we like to push ourselves. And maybe the challenges aren't as big or as daunting as they used to be. But maybe that, if that's where you're at right now, why shouldn't the challenge and why shouldn't the effort be just as rewarding?
Yeah, I want to expand the idea of effort too, and not just necessarily physical, where you know, when you're at a comp, and it's not necessarily just like how, of course, there's a physical effort, but I think you said before where you also reach what you are mentally capable. There's some connection there where even to reach your max physical effort, there has to be some kind of synergy there with your mentality in the moment. And i I told you I was in Mallorca, and I did a climb towards the end, which actually technically was one of my harder ones, and I did it first try. It was, like, technically, and it's a really cool, beautiful climb. But what it was for me is I had one of these moments where I was I was like, what am I doing here? I should, the ocean's too big. And then when I climbed it, I really dropped into the right headspace, climbed well, and then I kind of got far off the deck. I was in a good hold, gave it a shake, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like serious, but I was flashing and I messed up the sequence, got really shook, had to come back down, figured out the right way. And that whole scenario of not wanting to be there, giving up, but then deciding to actually show up, and then getting scared and having something go wrong. It was more than just the physical effort. It was those moments, I think, are special. So yeah, I just wanted to share my that's what I think of when I think of effort, is sometimes the grade doesn't matter, and it's just those moments that we really seek out, actually.
Yeah, I really, really agree with that. And I do think that like that type of effort is also trainable. And that's also like one of those, you go to the gym, you go to the crag, if every single time you get on is like a max effort attempt, then you know that on your send go or in a competition, you have trained yourself, you've conditioned yourself to only ever give that type of attempt. So you don't have to like deliberately bring it in that moment. You just have to fall back on, this is what I do and this is who I am. And I feel like that is something that even when you're in a lull, you're training yourself to be the most mentally and physically resilient that you can. Because oftentimes you show up to a comp or you show up to your proj and you don't feel 100%. You can't, especially a comp, you can't plan when it happens. You can't decide that, oh, I feel good, comp now, the way that you can you can be like, I want to go to the gym today because I feel great. I want to go to the crag and try my proj because I feel good today. It's like you have an opportunity and it is in a given time. And if you go in feeling maybe you're sick, maybe you mentally are like a little shaken for some reason, you can't always go in to an event at your 100%, but you need to train to know that at 80, 90%, you will give absolutely 100% of the 80 or 90% because that's what you do every time you show up. And you're training that even in plateaus, even in lulls.
And that's what life is like. You never know what day, what hour, what moment is going to be life defining because you don't get to be told when the test day is. And even if you did, you may get sick, like you were saying. So good way to live, Melina. Congrats again. That was
Thank you.
exciting to watch. And thank you for doing that. So I got the chance to talk to you again about it. And I just appreciated hearing what it was like from your perspective, because I don't think I appreciated where you were at leading up to during our last podcast. I didn't quite understand like the headspace you were trying to enter, and then to see it happen and it work out so well for you. It was a joy to watch and a pleasure to get to hear the behind the scenes. Thanks for sharing it. It was really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate any opportunity I have to share those intricacies because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes for every single competitor, and it is a really special moment for everyone. And yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about it.
Instead of just the Instagram montage that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, enjoy your trip to Bishop. I hope it goes well, and if you do something incredible like lucid dreaming or flashing the swarm, maybe we'll have to do a follow-up number 2.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. I can't wait to do it again. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.